Welcome back, everyone, to the Red Raider Report. And, guys, we're at the first week of Big 12 conference play. We're finally going to get to see this talented conference play against each other. And, unfortunately, we're going to see some teams probably fall and get knocked out of national title hopes and things like that. But that's the game of this college football. And we start first off with Oklahoma and Baylor. The Sooners go to Baylor. They take on the talented freshman quarterback in Robert Griffin.
This may be a case where Baylor kind of comes back to earth a little bit. Obviously, you got to take Oklahoma in this one, even on the road. But Bears, they got some momentum during non-conference play, but biting off the Sooners a little more than they can chew, I think.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think Oklahoma's going to win, but I do think that Baylor will be able to keep the game close early. I think the Bears are going to come out and prove that they're much improved. I think they're going to hang with Oklahoma for at least the first quarter. I look for Oklahoma to pull away either in the second quarter or the second half. But I think we'll see that Baylor is a much improved team. They're playing against the top-ranked team in the nation. So you can't get much of a better test than that.
And, of course, last week Oklahoma defeats TCU 35-10, a strong performance by Sam Bradford again. And across the state, up in Stillwater, Texas A&M visits the Oklahoma State Cowboys. This could be the first of a long trip through the Big 12 conference play for the Aggies.
Boy, this is a bad matchup, I think, for the Aggies. Look at Oklahoma State. They're the leading rushing team in the nation. Aggies, on the other hand, just cannot stop the run. They gave up 280 rushing yards to Army, which is an 0-4 football team. And the days of the wrecking crew are long gone. They barely even remember them now. I mean, Army last week had two drives. One was a 17-play drive. One was a 13-play drive, both of them longer than 70 yards. If the Aggies can't control Army's rushing offense any better than that, then they sure can't can do anything with Oklahoma State's, I don't think. So it's OSU at home.
I think last week's win against Army is going to be Texas A&M's last win of the season.
Wow, that's
They're not
bold.
going to win a single Big 12 game.
Man, that is bold.
I'll say it right now.
All right, well, we know Adam's feeling on the Aggies, and in truthfulness, they have a lot of room to grow, and it might be a really tough conference season.
At least this, if Aggies fans agree with you, Adam, this one is not on television, nor is next week's A&M game on television. So it's sort of like the Big 12 TV partners are avoiding putting A&M football on TV as long as they can this year.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you've got Aggies fans, but they probably don't want to see it, and no one else is going to be too interested. I mean, you put a game that's going to be a mismatch on television, and everyone tunes out by the third quarter when it's 42-6. So.
Right. And guys, Oklahoma State, they got a little revenge on Troy last week, convincingly beat them 55-24. Good performances again from their running backs, and that'll probably look to continue against Texas A&M. Texas, the Longhorns, Adam, they go to Colorado, and OU found out last year that is not a pleasant trip and could be a problem, but right now is Colt McCoy in Texas too talented for the Buffaloes?
I think they are, but I also think that this is going to be a big test for the Longhorns. I think this will end up being a close game. Obviously a lot closer than any other game Texas has played this year. I believe they've scored 52. They've won 3 of their 4 games, 52-10.
Right.
I believe the other one was just about as close. Colorado's a very good team at home. They've already beaten a ranked opponent at home. I think Texas is a lot better than West Virginia. We'll see how it shakes out. I expect Texas to win, but I don't think they'll win by more than 10 or 14 points.
Actually, you know what? I think this one sets up well for the Longhorns, and tell you why. Colorado last week loses 2 starting offensive linemen for the season, and we all know Colorado, decent offensive football team, not a great offensive football team. Their big gun, Darrell Scott, the true freshman superstar running back, hasn't really started firing yet. And couple that with the fact, again, two freshman offensive linemen, two starting offensive linemen knocked out for the year last year. Longhorns, on the other hand, leading the nation in sacks. Brian Arakpo's off to a really good start. So I'm thinking the Horns could really harass Cody Hawkins and a lot on Saturday, and this could kind of pull away there in the fourth quarter.
Right.
Well, I hope you're right, Don. That's very true. Cody Hawkins has been kind of the lesser of all the quarterbacks in the Big 12 so far. Texas is a young secondary, but they've done awfully well. It'll be interesting. Obviously, look at the matchups. Texas has the edge everywhere, but this could be one of those games. Texas has struggled against Kansas State inexplicably the last 2 years. This could be a similar situation.
Right, and guys, obviously Colorado, they suffered their first loss of the year last week at Jacksonville against Florida State, a 39-21 loss. And, maybe the marquee game in the conference, Missouri goes to Lincoln to take on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Is this a stumbling block for the Tigers, or is, Nebraska not quite ready to take on that offensive firepower?
I tell you what, Nebraska last week had a chance to get a pretty significant victory, taking on Virginia Tech, and they give up 35 points to a Virginia Tech team that's just been abysmal on offense this year. A terrible team in terms of total offense and a bad team in terms of throwing the football. And what they do against Nebraska, they hit some big passes. Not a bunch of them, 9 out of 15, but they hit some key passes at key moments. And if Nebraska can't defend Virginia Tech's passing game,
right,
imagine what's going to happen against Missouri's. One thing works in Nebraska's favor. This game is in Lincoln. Missouri hadn't won in Lincoln since 1978. It's also a night game, so the atmosphere should be pretty hostile toward the Tigers. But Chase Daniel's such a cool customer. I don't think it's really going to matter, and I think Missouri goes in there and wins for the first time in Lincoln in 30 years.
I agree. I think Missouri's going to win this game. Nebraska, first time they played a really tough opponent, or a relatively tough opponent, that they couldn't do it even at home. Missouri's going to win. One thing that's really interesting, if you look at this Big 12 schedule for the first week, you've got 6 ranked teams in the Big 12. 5 of them are playing on the road this week. Oklahoma State, the only one being at home against the Aggies. I think we're going to see. I think we could see at least 2 upsets. I don't think it'll be the Nebraska-Missouri game, but you never know.
Right, and you talk about Missouri also coming off an off week where they have 2 weeks to plan for the Huskers. That offense will probably be clicking and ready to go. And Dom, we end with the Big 12 slate with KU. They go to Iowa State in kind of an interesting game. You really don't know much about either team right now. Is that a stumbling block for the Jayhawks and Coach Mangini?
Well, Kansas has got to get that running game going. We've talked about that all this past month a little bit. Brad McAnderson was a terrific running back for them. I don't think anybody, though, expected them to miss him as much as they have. I think they felt like they had some pretty viable options to give them a good running game. It hadn't really clicked for them so far. They should win at Iowa State, but Adam made a good point. Most of your favorites are playing on the road this weekend, and that is, and I don't care where you're playing. You go on the road in the Big 12, and it's going to be a lot tougher a lot of times than people expect. So KU, I picked KU. I think certainly that's a logical pick, but it wouldn't surprise me. Iowa State's been a gritty, scrappy team, and has hung with some people so far.
Adam, you're on the same page there with the Jayhawks.
I agree. You mentioned Kansas's lack of a running game. Iowa State doesn't have much of one either. They're still trying to figure things out there. So if you compare the 2 passing games, no question the edge goes to the Jayhawks. And I think, other than Texas A&M, I see Iowa State, maybe as the least talented team in the Big 12. They just don't have it. So I think it's going to be a tough road for both those teams.
But you know what? If you're a Kansas fan, you better not take it lightly, because the thing to like about ISU is they hung tough with Iowa until that's a 3-3 game going into the 4th quarter, and they hung tough with Nevada, Las Vegas on the road, which is not a bad football team. So the thing I like, if you're an Iowa State fan, is that Gene Chizik seems to have his guys playing really hard, and so if it's a close game, middle of the second half, then things get kind of a little bit nervous for the Jayhawks.
Right, guys, and I'm sure conference play is going to hold a lot of surprises this year. It remains to be seen whether we're going to see that in week 1, but that's going to wrap up this episode of the Red Raider Report. As always, you want to see Don and Adam's stories, go to redraiders.com all year long. That's a product of LubbockOnline.com and the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal, and we always, once again, like to thank our sponsors. Campus Design down there at 98th and Quaker. Home game coming up against Nebraska, in 2 weeks, so that you might need some new Texas Tech gear. Get down there and check out those guys. They do a really nice job. And, guys, that's going to do it. I'm Zach Long for Don Williams and Adam Zubinich. We'll see you next week.